It has been a very bad past couple of months for the New York Times. You know, they had a bunch of their staff members outed as being really offensive and posting anti-Semitic things, or it was like one guy, and then they published this story about how Trump supporters are coming after him, and then everyone slammed the New York Times saying, dude, it's called journalism, and yes, people can investigate you guys, same as anybody else. And now this. The New York Times actually tweeted out praise of Mao Zedong. What? It was hilarious. Nightmarishly. New York Times deletes tweet downplaying Mao Zedong's murder of 45 million people. Oh man, talk about crazy. New York Times, what are you doing? Well, I'll tell you what you're doing. They're also tweeting that airplanes took aim at the buildings on 9/11. Here's the tweet the New York Times deleted this morning. I almost had to take my glasses off when I saw this. 18 years have passed since airplanes took aim and brought down the World Trade Center. Today, families will once again gather and grieve at the site where more than 2,000 people died. Oh, they deleted that because it wasn't planes that took aim. It was people. It was extremists. It was dangerous ideology. And let's never forget that. Now, a lot of people want to point the finger at the entirety of a religion. No. We don't blame calm, peaceful individuals for the crazies. It doesn't matter what your race is, your religion is, crazies exist. And yes, we need to talk about it. And yes, some groups have more crazies than others. That's fine. We prevent the violent crime. Even if you actually are an extremist and you believe crazy things like you're an authoritarian communist, just as long as you play by the same rules of respectable civil liberties, and don't get violent, well, you're allowed to believe that stuff. Let's start with the first story about the New York Times and Mao. Wow. Before we get started, check out timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There are multiple ways you can do it, or you can just share this video. That's the best way you can help. If you think what I do is good, sharing it on Facebook, YouTube, whatever, it helps me grow my channel and all that stuff, whatever. Let's read. The Daily Caller reports, the New York Times deleted a tweet that downplayed Chinese dictator Mao Zedong's mass murder of at least 45 million people on the anniversary of his death Monday. The New York Times archive Twitter account reposted the paper's 1976 obituary of Chairman Mao, which called him a, quote, great revolutionary, and referred to the policies that resulted in mass starvation as sometimes convulsive. Oof. The Times later deleted the tweet after widespread criticism, releasing a statement saying it lacked critical historical context. Here's what they tweeted. Mao Zedong died on this day in 1976. The Times said he began as an obscure peasant and died one of history's great revolutionary figures. Yes, the context in question was the mass death of 45 million people. It's the same story we hear all the time. Basically, some dictator thinks landlords shouldn't be allowed to own land, so they take all the land from the farmers and give it to peasants who don't know how to farm, who then can't farm, or they tell everybody to melt down their tools because they need the metal, and then there's no food, or they tell everybody to go in their fields and start killing all of a certain animal. It's a complicated story. Let's read. So there are the tweets. Anders Hangstrom, Mao kills 45 million people. New York Times, his rule was sometimes convulsive. Mao Zedong, who began as an obscure peasant, died one of history's great revolutionary figures. After establishing the Chinese People's Republic, Mao launched a series of sweeping, sometimes convulsive campaigns to transform a semi-feudal, largely illiterate, and predominantly agricultural country, encompassing almost 4 million square miles, into a modern industrialized socialist state. The obituary goes on to praise Mao for leading his country to develop its own nuclear bombs and guided missiles, as well as becoming an oil producer. The deaths caused by Chairman Mao's Great Leap Forward from 1958 to 1962 are difficult to quantify, but Frank Decoder, author of Mao's Great Famine, estimates that at least 45 million innocents perished, blowing earlier estimates out of the water. Quote, it is not merely the extent of the catastrophe that dwarfs earlier estimates, but also the manner in which many people died. Between 2 and 3 million victims were tortured to death or summarily killed, often for the slightest infraction. When a boy stole a handful of grain in a Hunan village, local boss Zhang Dechang forced his father to bury him alive. Dakota wrote in History Today, the father died of grief a few days later. The case of Wang Ziyu was reported to the central leadership. One of his ears was chopped off, his legs were tied with iron wire, a 10 kilogram stone was dropped on his back, and then he was branded with a sizzling tool, punishment for digging up a potato. Yes, great revolutionary figure. Not someone we should ever, ever want to praise. And we need to make sure we highlight all of these things. You know, we can talk about all the great evils, okay? But when you forget, that's when we're doomed. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. Well, here's the New York Times, again, on 9/11. Listen, today's the anniversary of 9/11. I remember waking up on the futon in my living room and seeing the news, and it was terrifying and it was horrifying. And it's something we all experienced, and I can only imagine what it must have been like to actually be in New York. I was on a couch, far away, safe, and I watched it happen. And to the best of my recollection, I believe it's been a long time. I remember sitting on my couch when the second plane hit live on television. My friends were listening to Mancow's Morning Madhouse, and they thought it was all a joke, laughing in the car until a few minutes passed and they were like, this guy's not joking, man. One of the most horrific days in our history, period. 3,000 people. And all of the horrifying things that came after it, war, death, and so much more. And the New York Times blamed the airplanes. Okay, let's read. 18 years to the day radical Islamic terrorists killed 2,977 innocents on American soil. The New York Times posted an inaccurate tweet that earned the left-leaning out a flood of criticism and prompted a quick deletion and correction. It was radical Islamic terrorists from several different countries who received special, who were, I don't want to get super complicated on what on which countries did what, because it is complicated, but Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Afghanistan. 18 years have passed since airplanes took aim and brought down the World Trade Center. Today, families will once again gather and grieve at the site where more than 2,000 people died. The Times posted in what was supposed to be a memorial post for 9/11, and they deleted it. It was quickly pointed out to the Times that airplanes were not responsible for taking the lives of nearly 3,000, a great deal more than 2,000, innocent Americans, but the radical Islamic terrorists who were flying the planes. The tweet was quickly deleted and the story amended. We've deleted an earlier tweet to this story and have edited for clarity. The story has also been updated, the Times wrote in a reply to that tweet. This is why political correctness is scary. They didn't want to play, like the New York Times apparently didn't want to point out radical Islam, I guess. They were probably worried the woke brigade would come for them. But that's the truth. That's what happened. And we know it. They say, 18 years after nearly 3,000 people were lost, families of those killed in the terror attacks will gather at the 9/11 memorial. There will be a moment of silence at 8:46 a.m. Then the names of the dead, one by one, will be recited. And that's the new tweet. They mentioned they deleted it. Just 2 days ago, the Times had... Here we go. They mentioned the MAO thing. I'm not going to rehash the MAO stuff. We'll scroll down. The Times was thoroughly ripped for their mistakes, which noticeably all take place in one direction, as highlighted by Daily Wire editor-in-chief Ben Shapiro. He said, in the last 2 days, New York Times Twitter account has had to delete unmitigated praise of Mao and this crap too. These were mistakes, yes, but it's pretty telling that every mistake the New York Times makes is in the same direction. Absolutely. Politics today flows in one direction. Everybody wants to bend the knee to the far left. That's exactly why we are seeing what we see. The left will come, they will attack. Not all of the left, but there are elements of the left that will insult, degrade, and try to destroy your business. That's what the New York Times was scared of. The ACLU, they, what did they get slammed for? They raised a ton of money off of challenging Trump's moratorium on travel, and then everyone got really outraged when they defended Charlottesville. They started bleeding, subscribers and money, and they caved. And now the ACLU pushes woke politics. Congratulations. You are now the opposition to civil liberties. It is ridiculous. Politics flows in one direction. The left will attack you and the right will welcome you. It's a fact. It's really weird. I wonder what the results will be. Maybe Trump 2020 and Trump Jr. 2024. If Republicans are sitting there, and trust me, I know so many Trump supporters that even the rude ones will fan you over and offer you a beer. And the left will say, get out and go sit with them. And what do you think moderates do? They go, fine, I'll go and do it. And when you see this, I gotta say, it is so angering. First, what the New York Times would have said, airplanes took aim. Are you kidding me? We know who did it. We know why they did it. And we're not going to fault every person on the planet. We're not going to fault the entirety of a religion. We're going to fault the extremists and the ideology and those, first and foremost, who perpetrated it. But because they're scared of the woke brigade, they'll bend the knee. A slap in the face to Americans, to the victims, to the family members, to the survivors, to the first responders, to those who fight every day still because they're sick after what they were breathing in on the ground. People rushed in to save lives. They did. And today, many of them are still sick. And that's why I'm glad Jon Stewart does what he does. But come on, man. I'm going to leave it there. Otherwise, I'm going to keep getting angrier. So thanks for hanging out. Stick around. Next segment will be tomorrow at 10 a.m. Podcast at 6:30 p.m. I will see you all next time.